joining us today. I'm Danica with RKLE Solutions. You are about to watch the Concur Business and Travel Expense Management Webcast replay. Crystal from Concur will be the presenter today. On the agenda is who is Concur, why you would want to use Concur, and then how we do it, a Concur demo. Concur is an integrated cloud and mobile platform. You can use it for travel, expense, invoicing. You can use the mobile app on your phone. We use it here at RKL, and it is a fantastic tool. Before we get started, here's a quick overview of Concur. All right, so let's jump right in with Crystal.
So the analogy that I always like to open with and draw is really, why do companies come to Concur, and why are they looking to, go to the cloud to streamline their expenses? And it's just like thinking about banking. When I have a check I need to deposit, I take a picture on my phone, I upload it, I view my account balance on my mobile phone. That's really the same thing for expense roll, for payroll, for expenses. You used to write checks. Now, for the most part, you probably receive a direct deposit to your bank account. You can even manage that from apps as well. And we kind of think of that as expense reporting. I've seen a lot of expense reports over the past 2.5 years that look a lot like this, where people are mailing things in, they're trying to match receipts, and it really can be as simple as using an application instead of having to use paper. Right. So when we look at the overall travel and expense management process today, it might be different for your organization, but this is often pretty representative of what it looks like. Your employees, if they're traveling, are making decisions kind of on their own of where they should book the flight. Is this the best price? They're going to book a hotel. They're traveling. They're emailing the plans. They're tracking receipts in an envelope. They may or may not copy them when they get back into the office. There's sometimes an archaic workflow between different departments and accounts and the manager. And then once that's completed, somebody manually keys that into the, maybe their Sage tool, and then a check is cut, and then they pay the credit card. So there's a lot of steps that are really out there. And I think as somebody who uses the system, getting the money back that I spent, if it's on a personal card or cash, is something that I want to get back as quick as possible. So keeping your employees happy are something to kind of think about. And then on the weekends, I don't really want to be spending an hour or 2 hours doing my expense report when I could be spending time with my family. So beyond the back-end efficiencies that we can gain, I think things that I think about is think about your employees and their efficiencies and what they could be doing with their time for your business or even their personal lives outside of that. And on average, you can plug this into what your numbers look like. On average, most companies, T&E is about 8 to 12% of their overall operating budget. And for companies that don't have it automated, you probably have a report that says, here's our company policies. But on average, about 20% is out of compliance. But the biggest thing I hear is, Crystal, we know our employees, they're doing the best they can, but we just don't have a way to enforce it or to give them guidelines. And moving to a system, that gives them the visibility to that will help them make better decisions earlier in the process. And from a time savings, these are from Aberdeen. I think we all get it. Technology helps us be more efficient with your time and money. And from a cost perspective, biggest thing that I hear when I talk to prospective clients is, Crystal, I get that this could be better, but Excel spreadsheets are free. And I think ultimately, yes, using Excel spreadsheet doesn't have a monthly subscription, but there are other costs that are associated to doing a process. The time, the resources, additional staff. Something that I've heard over and over is we're to the point of the volume of expense reports Susie stays up till 4 in the morning, a couple of times a month, processing and reviewing to pay our employees, and we're to the point where we need to hire another person. Well, wouldn't you rather hire that other person in another area of your business that's revenue generating or potentially could help with other back-end processes that you're trying to fix? So our hope is that not necessarily to replace employees, but instead of maybe having to allocate that resource to a back-end process that's not revenue generating, to maybe use Concur instead of that. Mailing, I've heard over and over, someone will want to get paid tomorrow because they waited 3 months to submit their reports and they're going to overnight all their receipts. Well, that's $20. And for every time, take that $20 times 30 sales reps, you could be spending hundreds or thousands of dollars a year just on mailing receipts to the office. So there are a lot of hidden costs related to doing the reports that way. In my demo today, I'm going to show you guys our travel and expense piece. And some of our clients, choose to stick with the expense side, but we do have clients that are, having their staff members travel. And I'll show you guys what that looks like. But the thing that we're going to bring into Concur is really the broadest travel content in the business market. So instead of your employees going out to Orbitz or Travelocity or Delta.com directly, we're going to really bring all that data into a one-stop shop. And it's going to make their lives easier. So we're vendor agnostic. So Concur is not a travel agency. We're a technology company. And our goal is essentially to bring as much relevant information of your travelers day to day into the tool. And we have a ton of direct connect carriers. So for example, JetBlue, Southwest Airlines, Sun Country. These are a lot of companies that are maybe regional carriers, charter carriers that don't necessarily play in the big market when it comes to, if you were to call a travel agency. And we have direct connections. So when your employees are searching and looking for a flight, you can be assured that they're finding the best, most reasonable options for your company and to get them to their appointments. And I'll show you some of those connections. And then also policy. This is big. The best way to control policy is before the money is spent. Because once the money is spent, I think we all kind of realize that it's difficult to have those conversations when you're telling somebody, we're not going to reimburse you, or maybe you don't even want to have that conversation. So when you're booking travel, we can kind of coordinate based on your organization what your travel policy looks like. It could be, by cost. It could even be by different department heads. So for example, perhaps a C-level staff member within your organization can travel first class and can book a first class ticket within Concur, or maybe the analysts or other team members, sales members would not. So you guys can customize that to keep your organization within policy before they're actually traveling. We call that visual guild at Concur. For me, one of the things that made me fall off my chair about 5 years ago when I saw my first demo of Concur as a customer was e-receipt. And what an e-receipt is, and it's an IRS compliant receipt. It's really more or less being pushed from the travel vendor into Concur. So when our clients are booking through our travel platform, if they have that module turned on, about 100% of major airlines, car rentals, about 80% of hotel chains participate in this. So that means when I check out of my Courtyard by Marriott, that receipt's going to be sitting very nicely in Concur waiting for me to, maybe add some specific comments or maybe the project I was working on in that particular week. So we've built those relationships behind the scenes, and ultimately it's a way to streamline this process and to put every single action that I'm making it worth my time and actionable down the road. Now, to kind of switch really momentarily here, the biggest thing I want to point out is mobile. So Concur is a web-based solution, but ultimately everything that we do surrounds our mobile platform and making sure that your employees, your managers, they have access to the data anywhere, anytime in the world. So I can actually work on my expense reports when I'm on the plane and I'm working offline. As a manager, if I'm sitting in a taxi in New York City and I'm a busy person and I never sit down in my office to review reports, I can improve John's expense report so that he and accounting don't have to wait. So everything that we do is mobile-centric. And the reason why is most travelers have a smartphone. My mom might be the one person in the world that I know that has a flip phone still. And maybe some people aren't big on apps, but overall, a traveler 2015 is embracing their mobile. They read their email on there. And if we're not, keeping up with the mobile strategy, in and outside of our business, we're going to be kind of caught in the dark. And something to think about as a business owner, as a business manager is companies are starting now to develop a mobile strategy. What can we do to expand our systems into mobile so that we can run fast, run quick, so that we can scale into new markets, so that we can focus our energy into a new product line. So accessibility is something to think about. Um, One app too that I'll showcase a little bit today in the demo is Expense-It. This is really a tool that we have available to our customers that allows you guys to take a picture of a receipt. And what we do is we actually turn that into an expense line item within your report. So it can read vendor, the date, the amount, the currency. It can even read a tip. And I use Expense-It pretty extensively when I travel because I wouldn't say I'm a lazy person, but I like to focus my energy on other things other than expense report. So when I have a meal, I pull out my cell phone, I take a picture on my Expense-It, so I know when I'm ready on Friday night to do my expense report, I have a nice little working list of all the expenses and my receipts are there for me. And this works really great for cash expenses, meals, for the miscellaneous things that are occurring as you're traveling or potentially, working in the office that are travel related. Um, and talking about travel as well, um, you know, I think we've all kind of lived in the world and yeah, paper is fantastic, but from a travel perspective, maybe some of you have heard of it or maybe actually even have it on your phone, TripIt. Concur owns TripIt. And a part of being a Concur customer, you actually can leverage TripIt and you get that within your program. And think of it as like a personal itinerary or a personal travel assistant in addition. So you might have booked your travel within Concur or you booked it directly with the vendor. All this is stored within TripIt. The great thing is it really gives you reminders. It tracks things. So for example, when I go to certain airports, I feel like sometimes I'll get through the gate check and they haven't even announced the gate yet. I'll get a text message on my phone from TripIt Pro that tells me the gate before they've even announced it or put it on the screen that I'm looking at. It will track if there's potential alternative flights if I want to try to get home earlier. TripIt Pro will help track your points, flight alerts if my flight's been canceled. So scenarios, I was in Concur's headquarters about a month ago, and I was working on a project, pretty heads down, and I was about ready to go jump in a taxi, about to close my computer, and I got a message that says, your flight's been delayed. I didn't have to do anything additional at the airport or airlines. It was just all there. So I got to work in an hour longer versus sitting at the airport for that hour and having that efficiency. So TripIt Pro, if you haven't used it, there's a free version. I encourage you guys to go download it, check it out. The Pro version is something that you would get if you became a client of Concur. Now for integration, most important for you on the phone that are accounting professionals or CEOs, Concur works with, Sage products. So our ultimate goal is to get the information as easy as possible, make everybody's lives easier, but ultimately we need to reflect that information into your backend. So, working with RKL and Sage, we have numerous Sage clients, and ultimately we'll get the information into your backend ERP so that all of those transactions, whether they're cash or credit card, are appropriately reflected within your record of choice. So we work with multiple Sage, and that's something that we can have a detailed conversation with if you decide that, down the road that Concur is a right fit for you. All right. So now, Gia, if you want to for a minute, you can unmute. I just want to see before I jump into the demo if there's any questions that people have. Um,
No
if not,
question.
that's okay. 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 All right. So give me 1 second here. I'm going to make sure I can share my screen here.
Was there a question or no? We should be unmuted right now. No questions on our end.
Okay.
Thank you.
Easy enough. Let's see here. I apologize. I haven't used this event center yet, so I'm usually pretty savvy. I'm the presenter, and I want to show my desktop. I'm going to switch my share. I share my screen. All right. Okay. Does that look good, everybody?
Yep, you look good.
Okay. Bingo, bingo. Okay. All right. Now for the fun part. So I've logged into my Concur demo site, and the first thing that I want to point out is I am obviously in the web here today. There's a couple different roles that exist within the Concur platform. There is an expense and travel kind of user, so kind of using it for your daily activities. There is a manager role, and then we also have an admin role. So for the purposes of the demo today, I'm going to focus really on the end user and manager. In the event that you guys have individually of interest in Concur after seeing today's demo, something that I'm always happy to do is to dive more into the admin side, get really into the nitty-gritty and talk about the integration, but I'm going to kind of focus really on the functionality and the benefits that your team members can leverage. So the first thing I want to point out within my personal profile is we're going to do, end-to-end from booking travel to creating a report. One thing that I'm really fond of is when I'm booking travel, I have my travel preferences already stored within the system. I hate buying things online if I don't have it saved. My credit card, my Delta points, nobody wants to rekey that every time. So when I go in to book and Concur, the system already knows who I am, what my hotel preferences are, if I have rental car preferences, what my Sky Miles are. I even might have my passport information and visa stored, and my payment method is there as well. So essentially when you're booking travel, you're just going all in. You're looking for where you need to go. Concur has that stored. And as a part of your implementation, something to keep in mind is Concur will help you partner with a travel management company. Some of you on the line might already have an existing relationship with the travel agency. It is probably very likely they are in our Concur network. If not, we can always confirm. Or for some small companies, maybe you've never worked with a travel agency because it's more simplistic to just go to the open market. When you go through a Concur evaluation, we can coach you through that, and ultimately, they're the ones providing all of the information that you'll see within the system. So I'm going to book a reservation here. I'm going to come to the New York area. This works very similar to, most tools that you guys are probably familiar with on the consumer tools. We can do air, car, train. Amtrak is big, I know, on the East Coast. I can find a hotel. I can even get as specific to say, maybe there's a specific chain or location I want to be close to. And for me, I don't like connections if I don't have to, so I can specify that as well. But more or less, I'm just coming in and I'm looking for that trip. So this is really where the information is coming from the back end. So like I said, Concur is vendor agnostic when it comes to the travel agencies, and we don't have a relationship where, we are getting the stuff from Delta. All this information is coming from the travel agency that you select behind the scenes. And then for some of the direct connect carriers such as Southwest or JetBlue, we're actually pulling directly from their database. So you can see here's some potential options. This flight from Southwest is, green, which means it's most reasonable. Here's a Delta flight. I'm going to select that one. Multiple carriers. I'm just going to take a look here. This one's green. We'll find one that's yellow just so I can show you guys the differences. So this is something that is configurable based on your organization, and Concur will give you some guidelines and best practices. So our goal is not to have your organization reinvent the wheel when it comes to travel. We're pretty consultative to say this is really best practice. You don't want people booking less than 14 days in advance. The connections, the fares. You can see here, if I wanted to book the Southwest flight, it's green, right? But if I wanted to take this United flight, perhaps it's based on the timing that I needed to get to and from the city. I could come in here and maybe give a reason. Why is there a travel violation? So as an organization, you can, flag these to get reported. You can require a pre-approval. We're definitely flexible within the workflows, but ultimately you're getting better information. So for example, at the end of the year as a company, you could report on what fare was selected, but what's the least logical fare? How much potential savings do we have? And why this is important is it gives you better information to drive your policies. And potentially tweak it. Maybe you need to be more liberal, or maybe you need to really tighten it down because people are, spending more than they need to. This is just going to give you better information to make more strategic decisions. And for some companies, you can even push spend towards preferred carriers. So for example, in my last company, we had a negotiated rate with Delta. So we made Delta more preferred because we want to make sure to get that contracted discount with those carriers, we need to push as much spend towards them as possible. So you can make carriers preferred along the way. So I'm going to go ahead and select this United flight just so that I can show you the login. I didn't get it on time. And in this particular demo site, it doesn't require pre-approval of any nature by my manager. It just says, go ahead and book it. Give a reason. All my programs are saved here. Here's my flight. Here's my estimated cost. And here's my payment method. So I could have multiple cards stored within the system, but I'm just going to use my default corporate card to go ahead and start this flight reservation. As the next step, I'm going to add in a hotel. I can also add in a car, but when I come to the East Coast, I typically just use taxi or train. And I'm talking through this, and truthfully, for me, I usually know exactly the flight number or where I want to go, so I go through it pretty quickly when it comes time to book, and it's something that I can usually do within a matter of minutes, even from my phone. The results here for the hotel are kind of based off the areas that I'm visiting for my clients. You can see here what I'm looking for is whether it's e-receipt enabled. I can search and filter by the neighborhood. If I need to, I like to stay in Midtown, the particular chain, whether they have breakfast. So it gives you a really clear picture of really where you're staying. If you go ahead and view the rates here, it will also show me if I'm in compliance. So beyond setting rules for your airfare, we can set rates. So for example, at Concur, after $400, it's going to maybe give me a warning that says, you know what, Crystal, maybe you should spend a little less. We can also load negotiated rates. So I know a lot of times organizations have hotels that maybe are close to their office that have lots of room stays. We can work with your travel agency or the recommended agency to load those rates into the system so that you get the best possible cost. And I'm going to go back here. So one thing I want to point out here is this price to beat. With your platform of the TripIt, we have a program called Price to Beat that you can choose to turn on or off. You can set just flat policies based off percentages, but we have some clients that are leveraging the Price to Beat. And what this takes into consideration is based on the market average of our clients, what should a hotel cost in that area for that date range based off the market. So here I have my price to beat set liberal. You can kind of choose within a range of how tight you want that to be. But for me, as long as I find a hotel less than $385 per night in the city, I'm going to accumulate points. Now, these points aren't something that you redeem directly with Concur. They're points that you can use internally. So, for example, I've seen companies that have put programs in place that say, hey, if you can have a balance of 1,000 points at the end of the year, you can get a day off, extra day off, or a gift card. Or as an organization, we're in the positive, we'll throw a party, or something in particular. So people love gamification and points. And we've had companies that have embraced this, and it really transforms the way their employees travel. For example, we had a gentleman, I believe he was at like a tent company in the Silicon Valley, that when he was in San Francisco, he would actually camp. And I know that sounds extreme, but he loved camping. He spent $40 a night, and he raked up the points. But when he went to London, he wanted to stay at the Ritz-Carlton. Well, because he'd saved the company so much money in his other travels, he was able to leverage those points for a hotel that normally would be, yellow or red. So maybe not being used to that extreme, but it's essentially giving a budget. It's kind of like an HSA for healthcare. You're putting the ownership on the employee to stay within the points. I've even seen some companies that require approval if you are in the negative or, you're in the hole. So you're not limiting people from traveling. It's just you're giving them incentives and kind of parameters around it. Okay, so I've now made my reservation to New York. At this point, the information is being sent over to my agency. So, ultimately, you're pulling the information. They're going to go ahead and fulfill that ticket. Something to keep in mind with agencies, if you ever have questions, you can always reach out directly to the vendors or that agency that you partner with behind the scenes. The Concur travel booking tool is essentially a tool. It's there to make your life easier for your employees that are spending time going to kayak to look for all the flights, and then they're going to Delta if they find the Delta flights. It's there to help save them time versus searching across the internet to try to find the rate and then to go directly to the site to book it. And overall, what I've learned, one question that I get a lot is about discounts and, is the pricing different in Concur versus if I go to Delta or go to Orbitz? And ultimately for the airfare rates really don't change. It doesn't matter whether you go to Orbitz or you go to Delta or you go to a travel agency. The rate should be the same. The only time you ever really see different rates within the market is if you're going with a company that's buying out the seats in advance and they're doing some bulk negotiating and like chartered. So overall, when it comes to the major airlines, what you're going to see in Concur is what you're going to see in the market. It's not going to differentiate. Hotels is a different game because ultimately for non-refundable, like the rates that you book that you can cancel where they won't charge you, those are pretty stagnant across the market. Where there is some flexibility and differences you might see is in the non-refundable fares. So if you go to Priceline and Hotels.com, what you're really paying for is a room that's right next to the elevator and the ice machine that they're trying to, sell off for a lower price. And if you don't use it, it's not refundable. So hotels, there can be some differences, but by going with the travel agency, often they will have pre-negotiated rates based on their volume. So, overall the travel market, although sometimes misleading with the pricing, is overall pretty consistent no matter how you're booking it. Okay, one second, my internet connection's being a little bit slow. I'm working from home today. Gia, could you unmute everybody? I just want to stop here on the travel piece before we go into expense to see if there's any questions.
Okay, we're unmuted, Crystal.
Okay, thanks, guys. Does anybody online have any questions about the travel piece? If not, that's okay.
Not at this time.
Awesome. Okay, great. I talk a lot, so I have to stop and make sure everybody's on board. The ship has not sailed away by itself. Perfect. All right. So I booked my trip. Yay, I finished. At this time, I'll get an email. I can add this to my calendar. This will be forwarded automatically to my TripIt app because I have that connected. So I know I can view this at any time. If I need to cancel my trip, I can do that. So everything is central for me. When I think of travel, I live within the Concur platform. It's where I go to. When I travel, I usually go like a day or two before and look on my mobile phone and my app on my upcoming trips and go, okay, which hotel did I book? Because sometimes I'll mix it up depending on where I'm speaking at. So before I go into the fun part of creating the expense report, I wanted to call it a couple things. So we talked about a mobile platform and really creating, a one-stop shop for your travelers and your users. And we have some amazing apps and integrations available, whether you're using the travel piece or not. Everybody loves Starbucks. But getting receipts for that might be a pain. We can actually sync directly to Starbucks. They'll send you a receipt automatically to Concur when you're done with that. Airbnb, I'm not sure if anybody checked this out yet, but some people who travel a lot like to feel a little bit more homey. So if you book through Airbnb, we push that hotel receipt or that stay receipt directly into Concur. I'm going to skip down a couple. Uber. This is a big one. Uber's kind of hit the market by storm, and I know a lot of people love using Uber, including myself, for personal and business. You can connect your Uber account directly to Concur. So when you're done with that Uber ride, you jump out of the black car, Concur will automatically create a placeholder and have that receipt from Uber. So one less thing to worry about. We talked about the mobile app, everything that you can do within the web, you can do it as an extension within our mobile products, Apple, including the iPad, Android, the newer versions of BlackBerry. We've talked about TripIt. Tango, I'm going to kind of skip through. But we have a ton of different apps, and they're all really centric around the traveler and the user and making sure that your life are cool. And we really embrace that at Concur. We're always looking for different companies that are embracing the social, the mobile, the travel-centric apps. And we're looking for and investing and pulling those integrations in because if there's an app that can make anybody's life easier, we're all about it. All right. Box. We have I'm not sure if any of you guys use Dropbox or Box. So the list is pretty detailed. The couple that I wanted to point out, oddly enough, were Starbucks and Uber, because I use those all the time, maybe too much. My husband always gets mad at me. He's like, you got to lay off the Starbucks. All right. So I've logged back into Concur, and so we get to do a little bit of smoke and mirrors here. So when I'm traveling, a couple things are happening, right? So I'm traveling, I'm paying for my expenses, or maybe I'm in the office and I'm paying for that lunch that I'm bringing in or that speaker. Two typical ways it's paid for, through some sort of company card or cash or personal card. So Concur has an integration to be able to pull in credit card charges. So for example, if you're using American Express business corporate card, anytime you swipe that card on a nightly basis, Concur is actually going to pull in all of those expenses. So I have an expense feed here directly from American Express. I have lots of data coming from the travel piece, and then I'm also taking pictures on my mobile phone and matching that. So ultimately, by the time I sit down to do my expense report, whether the cadence that my employer asks is weekly, semi-monthly, or monthly, I have a lot of information at my fingertips already. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead, I think this is the March one, I'm going to create a new expense report from scratch just so I can show you guys some key components. I'm going to give it a report name. Awesome. Demo 225. All right. This is at the header level. This is just to capture some general information. As a company, you can get specific within your setup to decide what information you want to track. I have client and project set up as just an example of the classifications that my organization might want me to track. But if I were to select a client here, on every single line item and an expense item, it will actually default for me. Client, project, division, I mean, whatever you track to and what you care about, we can sync into. Not sure if any of you are using Salesforce.com. That's another integration that we have, that if you have CRM data or client data in that system, we can also pull that and make that available as well. All right, so I am in a working expense report right now. On the left-hand side here, this is really kind of where I'm going to be adding and building out, and then this window will change. So the first thing I want to point out is I'm going to click Import here, and you're going to see here I have a Delta and a airline reservation here, and it's matched it to the credit card charge. So all I need to do is really to drag those into my report. It has all the rich information for me, the vendor, the date, the amount, the currency, and maybe it's waiting for my charge. Make this a little bit bigger. And if it's waiting for a card charge, it will let me know as well. I'll show you guys the e-receipt and what that looks like. That's a little bit bigger. But this is directly from Hilton. My arrival date, my restaurant, my minibar, my room tax. You can't really hide, right? So it has all this information, and this, and most importantly, is IRS compliant. So you might hear in the market companies saying, oh, we have e-receipts, but this is like a true digital electronic receipt that we're receiving without any intervention on the part of your employee. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close that for a second. Same thing here. It's going to itemize out for us. Same thing with airfare. It's going to pull in the ticket number, my e-receipt, my credit card charge, how it was paid for. And all I really need to do at this point is if I want to add a comment or maybe specifics of like the project that I was working on or department, I can come in here and do that. But for the most part, just by using Concur correct and kind of leveraging an end-to-end solution, the work's really have already been done. So if I click import and match to my charge, here's some other credit card charges that I have out there. So here's a charge here that I took a picture on my phone. So what I did before the demo is I went into my purse, I took a picture of, I had to make a small letter to a client. Took a picture of the receipt here, and Concur actually read all that information just by taking a picture of the receipt, and I just drag it over to the expense, make it a little bit bigger. There we go. All right, so I just drag it over. So by leveraging my mobile, I kind of have like a working list. And truthfully, my experience is I work off this list because I know I put most of my charges on my corporate card. I know that when I come to Concur, I'm going to have an extensive list of what I've spent on behalf of my organization, and I don't have to worry or track things down. So I usually go through, once a month, and then I just drag all my expenses over into my report. And then based off my company policies, I may or may not have a receipt. So I have a document that I can share with Gia and the team. It's a best practice document on expenses that kind of talk about what companies are doing when they require receipts for cash versus company cards. At Concur, anything over $25 cash, I have to have a receipt. But if it's on my corporate card and under $75, I don't need a receipt. So if I drill down into this office warehouse expense, you can see here the location that was paid for on my company card, but it's also smart enough to know my expense type. So each company will customize your expense types to really match your organization, and behind the scenes, this will match to most likely your Sage general ledger account. So your employees will never see that GL account number or that kind of back-end accounting language unless you decide that you want them to see that. But it's intelligent to know office warehouse should be advertising. Now, in the event that maybe I want to change it to a promotional item or a different expense type, you can always override what comes in from your credit card, but it's just there to help be intelligent as possible so that the time that I spend is really doing a quick check versus having to manually add every line item. Now, from a receipt standpoint, I'm pretty big on using the mobile, but that's not the only way that I can get items in. So I'm clicking on this available receipts button over here. I can upload directly from my computer. So if I'm in the office and I've scanned it or I have one in my home office, I can scan and upload items. Also, one real cool tool is our receipt store. So perhaps maybe somebody decided not to book in Concur Travel and they're checking out of the Hilton and they take a picture of the receipt, or the concierge says, Ms. Cheka, can I email your receipt? Absolutely. All I need to do is forward on to receipts@concur.com, and it can recognize up to 3 emails. So it could be my business email, my Gmail, or Yahoo, and it knows to put that receipt in my repository. So when I'm ready to create an expense report, if my company requires a receipt and I have yet to add it using my mobile phone, all I have to do is take that image and drag it over or match it. So the receipt store is just another quick way to get it into the system. I've even taken pictures on my phone and then forward it via email. Or if you're buying something on Amazon. So it's just a quick way to get that in. We also support fax, not as popular, but maybe you're in a hotel lobby and their scanner doesn't work, but their fax does. Go figure. You can come in here and you can actually print off a fax cover receipt and you can fax in. So there's in total 5 different ways to get receipts into Concur. Number 1, an e-receipt, for travel. Number 2 is via email using the receipt store. 3 is upload. 4 is fax, and 5 is our mobile. And so everybody can figure out what they're comfortable with. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close that out. Now, from a policy perspective, something to keep in mind is for every expense type, you can designate what your policy is. So, for example, you can create a daily, weekly, monthly limit if you choose, or maybe no policy at all. But Concur will kind of give you guidelines around that. So I'm going to quickly here create a cell phone expense. One thing that I've noticed in the industry, a bring your own device policy is something that is actually becoming more popular. So instead of going out and have corporate sponsored BlackBerry plans, companies are giving their employees allocations per month depending on their role, and just say, get your own phone, buy your own phone, just expense a portion of your bill or your whole bill per month. And that's what we do here at Concur. So every month, I expense a portion, on average about $100 per month. And let's say, for example, this is true story. I was in Cancun last week, and I did a lot of roaming charges to my clients. And my boss might have said, you know what, Crystal, go ahead and expense that overage on your phone, even though, typically this is above the reasonable amount. So you can set warnings. You can give soft flags, kind of like going through the yellow light. And here it might say, the expense is above the reasonable amount. You might want to give a comment. I might come in here, roaming in Cancun, Kelly approved for extra minutes. So I can come in here and give a reason. So this is something that we can guide you through. And like I said, in my best practices expense documents, we talk more beyond just the cell phone of really, what companies are doing. And we can kind of come in with a very consultative approach. Or, we can even tailor that to, specific requirements that your company has. All right. One thing I want to show, and then we'll talk about the manager approval, is car mileage. We can help support that as well. I find this to be really helpful. I've heard accountants that will say after the fact, I'll go into Google Maps and I'll do the calculations and make sure that that's where my employee went. Those days are kind of long gone. We have an integration directly with Google Maps, and we can help your employees if they are like me, forgetting to track that my odometer or where I went. Based off my personal profile, it knows my home address, where my local office is, and it can calculate where I went. So instead of doing this separately, it's baked right into Concur. I can make it round trip, and I can even deduct my typical commute. The IRS will often, request that you don't take your daily commute to and from the office, except beyond that. So based on that, it will calculate the mileage, and then for my company, my reimbursement rate typically will match the government. They'll kind of put that in. So good way to save them time and to make sure that they're, accurate. That's one area that we've seen, to be padded more than not. All right. Now I'm going to go ahead and delete this hotel just because it is waiting for my credit card charge. It hasn't come through yet. But overall, The system is very easy to use. You customize it to your policy, to your expense categories, to when you require receipts. Your employees can access it anywhere, anytime via the web or their mobile to submit this. And then they go ahead and submit it. Now, from a workflow perspective, it will remind me here too if there's any receipts missing, which is really nice. From a workflow perspective, most of our clients go with what I call a one-up method. So it goes from the employee to a set manager, and then after the manager to accounting. We have flexibility within that, so I think a lot of it depends on your company and your requirements. So we're always open to have conversations. The one thing that we offer at Concur as an additional service is an audit. So we have some organizations that say, Crystal, the most time-consuming piece that I have in accounting is not necessarily looking at the report and paying the credit card back. It's actually reviewing the physical receipts. In the workflow of your manager in accounting, if you go with our standard product, all the receipts are attached. They're very easily visible. But, you can decide as a company, how detailed you're reviewing. We do have an entire team here that can actually, before it even goes to the manager, will audit your receipts. They can look for policy differentiation. Does the date match the receipt of the expense? Is there potential fraud there? Is someone, submitting a receipt in Chinese for a wedding dress and assuming that we're not going to catch that? Those are things that, our team has found. I've even seen someone in the audit team, they sit in Minneapolis, or a group of them, where someone was submitting their dog hotel and they blacked out that it said woofda or barky bark, and it just said hotel, and they were expensing it as a hotel. Those are things that the Concur audit team can look for. So, if you go down an evaluation with Concur, we can talk about some of those additional things maybe that your organization, would want to take off your plate. Spend less time auditing those receipts and reports.
And that concludes our webinar with Concur and Crystal. Thanks for joining us today. Should you have any questions about Concur, or if it is a good fit for you, please contact Gia Lane on the East Coast or Rachel Roselli on the West Coast. They are your dedicated Sage account managers. Again, thanks for joining us.